Anthony Joshua has reiterated his view that he does not see Tyson Fury as a massive threat. That's not to say that he sees Tyson Fury as easy work or anything like that. He's just not intimidated by the guy, and he doesn't see him as being head and shoulders above the rest of the heavyweight division the way that a lot of the fans do and the way that Tyson Fury and his team appear to do. So I'm going to quote Anthony Joshua directly here. He's first talking about what he had to do in the wake of his loss to Andy Ruiz. Then he goes on to talk about Fury. So he said, quote, "I changed everything after that first fight. Losing to Andy made me rethink and restructure. I took the positives out of it, but it wasn't easy. My training camp was 6 weeks of pure hell. I had new team members. I had injuries I was trying to overcome. There were so many different issues, but we got there in the end through will, determination, and intelligence. Being world champion with all those knockouts, you do feel kind of unstoppable. But realistically, in boxing terms, I'm way ahead of where I should be. I'm working at such a quick pace. I shouldn't even be in a position where I'm mentioned in Tyson Fury's era. He's 5 or 6 years ahead of me in terms of turning professional. In fact, when he was turning pro, I was just putting on my gloves for the first time. Tyson needs educating. All us athletes do. We often didn't go far in school, so a lot of our comments and actions aren't great. But let's talk about him as a boxer. I don't find him intimidating, and I haven't seen him do anything in the ring where I think this guy is going to be a massive threat. He's talented and he's awkward, and that's often enough to get you quite far in life," end quote. So, yeah, he talked about what he had to go through in the run-up to the Ruiz rematch, and I really think that most boxing fans don't understand how tough that was. See, I saw so many people criticizing AJ for a negative and scared performance against Ruiz. Unless you've been in that situation, and none of you have, then you don't even have any idea the kind of pressure, the mental pressure that is on a fighter. Having to come back from a humiliating defeat where he was dropped multiple times. Having to deal with all the naysayers and the critics, people writing him off, calling him a hype job, saying that he'll get destroyed in the rematch. The pressure of his promoter, the pressure, and I'm talking about the expectations of his promoter, the expectations of his fans, the people who want him to fail. And on top of that, getting back in there immediately with a guy who wiped you out. The amount of pressure that he was dealing with was incredible. And yet he was still able to get in there and win. He was still able to get in there and, get through the training camp and deal with all the humiliation, all the demons, all that kind of stuff. He's talked about injuries in camp and what have you. The camp was hell. Fans, most of them have never laced up a pair of gloves in their life. Never stepped in the ring to have a fight, a proper fight. These are the things that they don't really understand, a lot of them. I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of them just don't understand how tough it is mentally to actually do what AJ did. So, criticizing the manner of his performance and saying he fought scared. I mean, I'd like to see you in that same position and see whether you fight scared. The name of the game is to win. And in that situation right there, he did very, very well to hold it all together mentally and come out with a W. Even if it wasn't his prettiest performance or his most scintillating or devastating, under the circumstances, he did very, very well. Okay. Now, moving forward, yes, he's going to have to be more entertaining than that. He's going to have to be more exciting than that. AJ isn't who he is now in terms of, his market value. He isn't in that position through fighting negative, scared fights. That's not why he's there. He's there because for most of his career, he's been exciting. He's been providing knockouts. He's been explosive. And so moving forward, if he wants to maintain that status, he's going to have to get back to being exciting. Doesn't mean he has to be reckless, but he's going to have to be more assertive and more destructive than he was in the Andy Ruiz rematch. I think it's only right to look at that Andy Ruiz rematch and say, under the circumstances, I can forgive such a negative performance. But moving forward, that's not going to cut the mustard when it comes to popularity and, public perception and what have you. Now, as far as what he says about Tyson Fury, he's not intimidated by him, all that kind of stuff. He also talked about how when you have all these knockouts and you're champion of the world, you do kind of feel unstoppable. And that's inevitable, isn't it? When you're a young guy, when you got all this money, when you've knocked all these people out, and you've got millions of people gassing your head up. At some stage, I don't care what kind of people you have around you, it has to get to you. It has to make you think that you're better than you are at some stage, even if it's just a little bit. It has to make you a little complacent when you're getting all that adulation, when you're getting all that support, when you're getting people just gassing your head up day in, day out. It's going to, get you to be a bit complacent at some stage. And that's what happened to him. But he seems to have learned from that, at least in the short term. Now, as far as what he said about Fury, as I was going to say, there are going to be people who are upset with AJ saying this. And this baffles me. If you're a Tyson Fury fan, why would you be ridiculing AJ saying this? That he's not intimidated by Fury and he doesn't see him as, this monolithic heavyweight who's head and shoulders above everybody. Why would you be mad? AJ is a competitor. He's a fighter. Why on earth what do you expect him to say? Oh yeah, Tyson Fury's the best and he's head and shoulders above me and you know what, I'm really scared of him. Would you respect Anthony Joshua if he said that? That's a ridiculous thing to expect somebody to say. Okay? All these guys are going to believe that they're the best. All the guys who are vying for the top position, they're all going to believe they're the best. Doesn't mean that they are, but as fighters, as world champions, they're not in the position they're in right now through not believing in themselves. So they're going to trust their own ego, their own ability, and believe that they can beat everybody. So if you're a Fury fan, you should expect that from Anthony Joshua. You shouldn't criticize him being like that. Yeah? You should say, okay, fair enough. That's what he feels, but you believe your man is better. And let's get them in the ring and one way or another we can find out. Rather than having a go when somebody believes themselves to be the best. It don't make no sense to me. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully the undisputed fight can take place ideally this year. If not, then maybe next year at some stage. We don't know what's going on with Deontay Wilder, whether he's actually going to take that rubber match with Fury. Let me know what you guys think about what AJ said with regards to Fury, overcoming the Ruiz loss, and whether this undisputed fight can actually happen. Let me know, people. It's happening. I'm out.